I've just got a short question for each of you, if that's okay. Just building a little bit on what you have all spoken about. And thank you for sharing your thoughts. I thought that was really wonderful to hear more from each of you. Chris, I'm going to kind of come to you first, if that's okay, just building on what you shared. How can churches kind of practically teach more on discipleship mission? Not just about kind of funding the budgets, as we've talked about this morning and this afternoon. But can you just unpack a little bit about, you gave us some ideas, but can you just unpack that for us a little bit?
Thank you. A couple of things, I think. First of all, it's not about giving young people a finished packaged idea. It's the conversation. So I think often we don't talk to young people about things, whether it's suffering or whatever it might be, because we haven't got it all tied neatly up in a format that we think they can handle. But actually they can handle the conversation and the messiness and the fuzzy edges. So first of all, there's something to be said. Just sit over pizza and have a conversation. And I think the other thing is just mentioning traitors. I can't believe I'm doing this for the second time, but I just think our world is so full of rich stories and examples, and young people are living in that world and that culture. And I just think there are so many opportunities for youth leaders to just sit and use those as starting points and not be afraid about, as I say, there being a neat answer to get to. You're learning as a teenager. You're going to and fro with your faith. You're testing the edges. You're exploring it. You don't have to have it all worked out at 12, but it's great to have started the conversation.
Thank you. Super helpful. And Xenia, I guess maybe the flip side to that question, which is, what do you think kind of switches young people off when it comes to kind of talking about money? And how can we get young people excited about talking about generosity rather than kind of feeling pressured?
Yeah, I was thinking about how, like at church, if we're talking about, let's say, giving in terms of like finance, and it's like every Sunday, and it just feels like you're giving me a sales pitch about the church rather than inviting me into deeper spiritual depths with God. I feel like we have to get the balance. Like, of course, we want to see the church go forward in all that God has to use for the church. But I also think, like, what about me? Like, what about me and my discipleship, in my growth? And I think the language that we use has to be equal and fair to both, but also feel like, oh, I'm being invited into depths with God, and I'm not just being used because I'm a young person with a bit of student finance. Like, yeah. And I also think on that, I was thinking about how much we've been using the Bible today to speak about everything, and everything goes back to the word. And in the book of Philippians chapter 4, when Paul's speaking about the church, and he says, like, the whole, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, and I'm content in all things. But he says, like, oh, I asked you to give not because I needed it, but so that you could participate with God and be blessed in an opportunity to give. And I think there's something in that, in the teaching young people that giving isn't just to serve a means, but it's actually to be blessed as well and to participate with Jesus in our generosity. And that doesn't just look like finance, but finance is a part of it. And so I think it's about the language that we use and the tension between the two. Like, yes, we want to see the church advance, but we also want to see young people discipled and grown in their walk with Jesus too.
Love that. Thank you. And Rhiannon, question for you. We've talked a lot about how the data is telling us about 18 to 34-year-olds giving the highest portion of their income, and also being the most open to giving more. So what does this tell us, do you think, about how younger Christians actually see generosity? And perhaps maybe you could talk a little bit about where you think churches are maybe misunderstanding this age group.
I think what it tells us is that generosity matters. And we've spoken a lot rightly about discipleship and formation. And that absolutely is needed, and we need to lean into that. And I so agree on the right language, and that not being a transactional conversation, but one that is mutually growing together in faith. But I think it shows we're off to, like, we're not on a closed door. This is not a closed, locked door. This is something to build on and to be brave, to stand up and have that conversation. And I would say it's going to be so important to listen for the right language and to really understand motivations. So a stat that I have failed to say twice now, so I'm going to say it now, is that when we looked at these well-being questions, we asked people, to what extent do you agree it's important for me to make a difference in the world? And active Christians aged 18 to 24, 86% of them agreed with that, which is the highest of any age group in the church. But when we compare it to our non-Christians of the same age, it was 66%. So there is something for young Christians, no matter how you compare them, that they want to make a difference in the world. And that is part of their faith, right? They don't see a binary on those things. Like growing deep in faith, I think, is part of also changing the world. And so I think it's going to be about helping build that toolkit of the various ways that activism can be, brought to life. So in terms of, was it misunderstood, was your question? I wouldn't want to generalize on that. There are, every young person is an individual in an individual community of the church. But I think perhaps my reflection on what I've heard a lot over the last year or so is that there is sometimes a gap generationally between what older Christians think how deep that young people want to go, and that there can be a bit of a dilution because they're worried, I don't know, that young people will be bored, that young people can't concentrate, and if it's not in a TikTok video, it's not gonna break through. And we can bring these terrible stereotypes into the conversation when everything that I have seen through both data and conversation is just really pointing to that our younger Christians are in church because they want to be in church, and they want that entire experience of being church. They have made a decision to be there against what most of their peers will be doing, and let's take that commitment seriously.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We've sadly run out of time for our panel. I think we could probably talk to these guys all afternoon because this is just really wonderful stuff. So let's just give our panel another round of applause.